Well, hello, strangers. Neon Static, Viola. Today, Scary Story 125. For those of you keeping count. Am I keeping count? Surely you've heard of Chekhov's gun. It's a filmmaking/storytelling principle that you don't introduce unnecessary elements or rabbit holes into a story. The concept is that if you show something in Act 1, it must go off by Act 3. Otherwise, it was extraneous information and you just wasted your audience's time. Well, perhaps I take it a little too literally, because I am a firm believer that life follows the same principle. Essentially, if I become aware of information, a piece of trivia, or somebody casually letting me know about something that happened to them, it's for a reason. I'm meant to have this information, and it's been provided to me so that when it's relevant, when it's necessary, I'll have it. I mean, life is a chaotic mess anyway. Whatever you can do to make sense of it, right? Lest you think I'm all woo-woo about it, I have a very real example of how it came true. Again, this is story 125 out of however many this ends up being. And here's what happened. You may have picked up on this, but yours truly did serve in the military, which means a lot of moving. It means I've gone a lot of different places and met a lot of different people. And one of the constants in my life, whether I look it or not, is the gym. It was at this gym that I met Trina. Trina was, I think, a Zumba instructor, something like that. But she also worked the front desk, so I ended up seeing her pretty often. And the way that you do, you get to know a person. You talk to them. Now, this gym was a 24-hour kind of a gym. The staff was there from, I think, 8 to 5, normal business hours. But then you also had a key fob, so you could let yourself in at any time that you wanted. The gym also had some pretty nice additional services, especially for the times. Now, those were a little trickier, because anything that had a setup or required a manager key to unlock a certain piece of equipment, clearly you couldn't be using that at 2 a.m. when there was nobody there. But as an employee, Trina had full run of the facility. And when she switched to nights, which is when she and I really started to talk, not many people are up at 2 a.m. Fewer of them are using that hour to lift weights. She started to avail herself of the different facilities. One of the things that they had in this gym was a stand-up tanning bed. Now, the real horror story here is skin cancer. Don't use tanning beds. But this was the aughts, and between being very tapped into the bodybuilding culture and a few desert deployments, so yours truly was already kind of working on a tan, it occurred to me one day, ask her, hey, is there any way that I could go use those facilities? And immediately, I saw a look pass Trina's face. A look of horror and shock, immediately followed by stammering, saying, no, you don't want to do that. Trust me, you don't want to do that. I thought maybe she was just being a little dramatic, maybe worrying that I was going to prematurely age myself, which tanning beds do. Don't use them. But she told me that there was a very, very good reason why. But she couldn't tell me there. The way she said it, I knew something serious had happened. So I suggested she and I go to the local Denny's, also open 24 hours. And if she wanted to, she could share. And she did. So over a stack of silver dollar pancakes, she told me what happened when she used it. Before I came along and started coming in at raccoon brunch hours, she was mostly alone in the gym between the hours of 10 to 3 a.m. Very much a dead zone, with only a few regulars straggling in and out. And there was no one expected to be at the front desk at those hours anyway, At that point, she looked just like a patron, albeit a patron with the key to unlock the tanning bedroom. So she went through her workout and then walked back to the employees-only area and unlocked the door. I think she also had to unlock a panel to set it for a certain amount of time. Then she made her way over to the tanning bedroom, let herself in, and got undressed. It was a standing tanning bed. Normally the ones that you've seen on TV and movies are a laying down affair. But this was more like a booth that surrounded you with bars of light. Think fluorescent lights from hell. And it makes a horrible sound when you turn it on. There's internal fan components to stop it from shattering or breaking because it gets so hot. So once you turn it on and step into it, it sounds a lot like being on the inside of a hairdryer. Additionally, unless you want to burn your retinas directly out of your skull, you have to wear little goggles or sun protection. The ones they give you are about this big and basically cup around your eye only. They can't be much bigger than that or you'd get unsightly tan lines, the reverse panda. And they have a little circle with dark glass in it, so you can barely see out of these things. And as most people do not want tan lines on their face, they don't want tan lines anywhere else. So, ordinarily, bikinis or less is what you're dealing with in a tanning bed. Well, Trina admitted to me, over rapidly cooling and uneaten breakfast food, that she had walked in and gotten completely undressed, put on her goggles, and then stepped into the booth to receive her golden glow. It's whirring around her, it's humming, everything's covered in a bright blue light, and she can barely see when she's periodically opening her eyes. But then, as she's standing there amidst all of that cacophony, she just gets the funniest sense that she's not alone. Like the pressure change of a door opening into the small room. She opens her eyes, and of course, she can't see anything. It's blinding in there, even with the little sun protection goggles. So she shuts them and sort of balls her fists and tells herself, no, you're just freaking yourself out. But no, she's not. She's not freaking herself out. She's standing there, in this bed, arms held out so that she didn't get tan lines. And she swears that even amidst all of the whirring and the noise, she feels air changes, air movement across her outstretched hands. First one, and then a presence that she can feel circling to the other. It's growing, and it's not a question, it's a sure thing. She knows there's something there. So very slowly, as though she's just adjusting them, she both turns and lifts her sun protection to face one of the gaps in the booth where she senses a presence. She turns. Now, her vision is shot between both the bright lights and the dark sunglasses, which means that at first, all she can make out is the silhouette. But there's backglow in the room, and that gives her the glowing outline. As she stands there, completely vulnerable, in her closed room where she expected to see no one, at 1:40 in the morning, there is a man. There is a man standing there, and she has caught him in the act of reaching his hand out towards her. She freezes for a moment, her eyes taking in this image, but her brain not really wanting to believe it's there because it's horrifying. It's a nightmare. She's completely undressed. She has nothing to defend herself with. Her eyes are beginning to tear at the corners because the ambient light from this tanning bed is bright enough to burn. And that's when the timer on the tanning bed runs out. And with a loud thunk, the light turns off, plunging the room into near darkness. Instinctually, she reached out, smacking away the hand. What an invasion! She's horrified. Her voice is locked in her throat. Even now, even understanding the invasion of privacy, even understanding how disgusting this is, this man wandering into this room, hadn't she locked the door? She knew she had. Both the door automatically locking from the outside, requiring an employee key to even get in, and the deadbolt, meaning whoever was in the room could further secure it. How had he gotten in? She didn't know. All she knew was that he was there, and just before the lights clicked off, she saw that his hand wasn't empty. It had been holding some black rectangle. A camera. Of course, this is one of those creep shot people, not content with putting them in the toilets. This man had followed her into a room where she should have had privacy to invade it. Now, she still couldn't make any sound. The terror had her vocal cords in a death grip, but that didn't mean the rest of her couldn't move. She swung her arm out, making contact with the arm that had been stretched out towards her. It started to recoil, and she grabbed it and raked her nails down it, shaking at it like a dog with a bone, because she knew she needed to get that camera away from him. God knew what he had on it. He did not want to let it go. He was already trying to escape, trying to withdraw his arm back so that he could squeeze back along the wall and make it outside the door. And finally, her attack was enough, or his need to escape enough, that he dropped it, pulled his arm back completely, and, moving quickly, he escaped out of the door. It swung shut behind him, and she heard the auto-lock engage, thus reconfirming there should have been no way for some nameless patron to get in. Now, as she's telling me this story at this Denny's, I am running through like the 5 stages of grief. I am pissed on her behalf. I'm feeling my heart constrict for her. I am emotionally going through this with her, from the righteous indignation that a locked door with 2 locks wasn't enough to keep other people out, that a place where she should have been safe was anything but. The frustration at not being able to make a sound, to alert any of the straggling regulars of what was going on, which allowed the man to make good his escape. She threw a towel around herself and raced out onto the gym floor, but he was long gone. Come to find out, he was a contractor who'd been hired to do some maintenance work on their wet pipe suppression system for fire alarms. The foreman had been given a copy of the master key, and for emergency purposes, the master key also unlocked the deadbolt in the tanning bed room. This allayed at least one of her fears that this man had been creepy crawling into this tanning bed for God knew how long, filming women without their consent for months, for the footage to be uploaded online and used against them. At least, that's what she thought it was for. Because, see, when she went back into the tanning room to retrieve and put on her clothes, and then call the police, she stooped down and picked up the black rectangle that she'd knocked out of the man's hand. The camera. But it wasn't a camera. It was a stun gun. She just stood there, holding this thing in her hand. See, she thought the worst thing that could happen was that this footage of her taken illicitly would appear online. But this wasn't a camera. That wasn't for that. This was something else. That man had been reaching out, planning to jam it into her completely vulnerable body. And then what? The gym owner followed up with the police, but the contractor had been hiring non-union workers, and though the contractor readily handed over his employment record, they found that the address was a fake, as was the emergency contact. The man was completely untraceable. He disappeared. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that'll put you off your pancakes. I can't say that I've ever gone to a Denny's since without remembering Trina and this story, and remembering how angry she was. Not just at the guy, not just at the contractor for not doing better background checks, but at herself. She kept saying, if only I could have screamed. Why? Why did I freeze? We're supposed to fight or flight. But I froze. What good is that? I didn't know, not at the time. I comforted her as best I could. What else could I do? Well, not use the tanning bed, that's for damn sure. I was in that area for about another year before I moved on to a different state. New base, new gym. Now, my new gym was also 24 hours, but it didn't have a key fob. They actually went to the trouble of having staff on site 24/7. In fact, come to think of it, the only other gym in that town did the same thing. 24-hour operations, but no key fob. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it has something to do with insurance, or maybe it's just more expensive than not to implement a key fob system. Can't say as it ever occurred to me to ask. This gym was oddly laid out. It was not built to be a gym. I think it used to be an arts and crafts store, or maybe a grocery store. The layout was odd. You walk into the front to the desk. Past the desk, you walked directly into machines. All your weightlifting machines, your bench press machines, your lat pull downs, etc. Cardio was off to the side. Non-machine weightlifting was off caddy corner, next to the men's locker room. Then there was a pool, and then there was the women's locker room. They were completely separate, completely different sides of this gym, and that becomes very important very quickly. Well, you know me, I'm still keeping my goblin hours, so I'm going in there at 2 or 3 a.m., especially when I first moved to this town. This gym didn't have a tanning bed, don't worry, I wasn't thinking about that. But it did have a couple of saunas, the aforementioned pool, a jacuzzi, things that I never used. What I did make full use of was full shower amenities. The locker rooms were big, and they had 6 or 7 showers a pop. At least they did on the girls' side. Couldn't tell you about the boys, but I assume similar layout. What I would do is go in before work. I'd get in my workout, go shower off, get dressed, and go straight to work. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And I was normally the only person there. It was a small town, and 2 a.m. was a dead time, as far as I could tell. So I got really used to walking around in that locker room in states of undress, completely alone. The only sound would be the occasional dripping of something broken, or the shower, which once you were standing in it sort of created a white wall of sound around you. But that's the thing about regularity. You get used to it. You know what normal sounds like. So when something's different, even subconsciously, you pick up on it. And I think that's what must have happened, because I have no idea how I could have heard anything standing in that cubicle with the water splooshing around me. And yet, one morning, I did. I'm standing there on squishy little shower shoes. I'm not wearing anything. It wasn't a hair wash day, so my hair was up in some angry pineapple permutation so it didn't get wet. But I had soap in my eyes. I had turned to the shower spray to wash them out. And I just knew. A change in air, an echoing scuffle on the tile. I don't know, but I knew. Someone was there. Someone was there. And they were close. My back was to the opening of the shower cubicle. I felt air, cold air. The curtain. The rings of the curtain. Somebody was opening the shower cubicle I was in. So open my eyes or not, I swung around. And there, standing, holding the shower curtain aside, was a man I'd never seen before. Dirty, scraggly. My sudden movement startled him. He sort of bobbed back, but held onto the curtain, gave kind of a grunting sound. But he didn't fully retreat, he didn't let go, he didn't scamper off, having been caught. Peeping Tom kind of rules. No, he momentarily bobbed back. But then he began to speak. He began to explain himself? I remember, it was kind of slurry, but I remember him saying that he was lost. He was looking for the men's room. He had permission. He had permission for the men's room. But this was the women's room. This was the women's room on the complete opposite-ass side of the gym. And this was clearly not a toilet. This was clearly a woman in the shower. I'm in a state of panic. I can see the tail of my towel, this orange monstrosity. I grab it and pull it into the shower cubicle. I didn't turn the water off. This thing's immediately soaked. So much for having a towel, but at least I can cover myself. The man again lurched backwards a moment when he saw me reach out and snatch my towel. But now, he's taking a step forward. And his mouth is still saying these excuses about how, oh, he's so sorry, he didn't mean to, he's going to leave. It's just he's so confused. He needs the bathroom. But his actions, his body, he's advancing on me. He's coming into the shower. He's coming towards me. I don't know what's going on. All I know is that I cannot afford to be cornered in this shower stall, this slippery shower stall. He's standing to the right holding the shower curtain, so I break left. I bolt through the other side of the shower curtain. It hit my face pretty hard, but I didn't care. One arm is still holding the towel against me. The other, I am grabbing for anything I can. The only things I'd had in that shower cubicle with me were travel-sized shampoo and conditioner. Aside from offering him a lather, rinse, and repeat, there wasn't much I could do. But what I'd had hanging under my towel was my gym bag. I grabbed it, and I held it in front of me like a shield. I opened my mouth. I wanted to tell him to get away from me. What the hell was he doing? If he needed the men's bathroom so bad, go to it. Clearly, not the area. My voice was locked. All that came out was this croak. I don't think I made a sound, not even when I initially jumped. And now there I was, holding a towel and my gym bag in front of me. He'd let go of the shower curtain. I'd broken left, and left, unfortunately, dead-ended in the rest of the shower cubicles. I'd gotten out of a very small space, but I was still cornered. And he was taking these shuffling steps towards me. He was asking for my help. He needed my help, he kept saying. He needed the men's room, and he needed my help. And don't worry, he wasn't going to hurt me. Who said anything about hurting me? I opened my mouth to tell him to go pound sand, to scream for help. The gym was more deserted than usual, but there were still people out there. And the acoustics in that room, I knew my voice would carry, but nothing was coming out. And all at once, I was so angry. I was so angry at the violation. This was a space I was supposed to be safe. This was a space where I should have been relaxed and I shouldn't have to deal with my own protective needs. I should have been able to use the gym like a paying patron and move along. I shouldn't have had to account for this, have a contingency plan for this, and yet... And then I thought about Trina. Because how could I not? It was an eerily similar thing. And I thought about Trina, saying, why couldn't I have done something? Why couldn't I have screamed? The best she could do was reach out and grab him, because she'd had nothing to defend herself. My shower sandal was still wet. The heel slipped momentarily, bringing me forward, bringing me towards this guy. Now he had both hands out, coming towards me. I caught myself at the last minute, and I heard the contents of my gym bag rustle. I thought about Trina. I thought about how angry she was, and I became angry for her. Gym bag. In the shower, I'd had nothing. Trial-sized shampoo and conditioner. But my gym bag is, well, it's full of stuff. I am most people's token fitness friend, and so they buy me all manner of things, and sometimes not knowing what to do with it, I just pack it around. I thought about what was in that gym bag, and then looked down. The zipper was partially undone. And what do you know? The thing that I thought about, the thing that I remembered that moment, was right there on top. I mean, of course it was. It was deadlift day. Fashion accessory aside, if you've never actually lifted with a weightlifting belt, they are not light, and the buckles on them are fairly heavy duty. Still holding the bag and my towel with one hand, I reached in and ripped out my belt. And then immediately, I began swinging. And the second that I began swinging on this guy, it was like it unlocked the rest of me. It unlocked my voice, and I was able to draw in a deep breath, and I screamed. I screamed as hard as I could. I screamed so loud that it hurt my ears. It was nonsense. Some mashed together, get away from me, stop this, who the hell are you, get away from me, every four-letter word you could ever imagine. But I was screaming, indecipherable gibberish. It didn't matter that what I was saying didn't make sense, because all my corporate normie job people are going to know this one. Sometimes it's not the words you say, it's the way you say it. I was tapping into my deepest rage. The anger, the humiliation, the indignation, but also pure fury. Fury at what happened to me, maybe, but it was Trina I saw. It was Trina I was screaming for. Sound immediately comes echoing. The man's already turning. He's wheeling away. His arms are no longer reaching for me. He is now making haste to leave the shower area, to leave the locker room. From around the corner, I hear guys yelling, saying, "What's going on? Who's in there?" I wish I could say I'd lashed him a good one with my belt. I absolutely didn't hit, not once. But the fact that I was able to ward him away, like a villager with a torch warding away a pack of wolves, it was enough. He never touched me. The man booked it. Either the men outside were too confused to know to hold him, or were too surprised. I mean, given my own reaction, I really can't be mad at them for not knowing exactly what to do. And he ran off into the night. I talked to the people at the front desk. The gym hired very young people and didn't exactly give them training on what to do. The doors were open 24/7. If somebody wandered in who was a non-member and begged to use the restroom, it was very much up to whatever 17-year-old was sitting there at the desk. Could I be mad that this teenager didn't want trouble, didn't want to piss him off by telling him no? No. Had she indicated where the men's bathroom was on the opposite side of the gym? Yes. It was a willful, deliberate decision for that man to beeline it to the women's side, just like everything else that followed. We assumed itinerant. He was a non-member, and the girl was terrified of losing her job, so she really didn't want to call the cops. And besides that, what could I really do or say about it? And really, the only reason that nothing happened to me, aside from a scare and a bit of embarrassment, well, it was because of a gym employee, wasn't it? A girl like her. One named Trina that lived in Nebraska, mind, but still, I didn't push the issue. I was just happy that the worst that had happened was the guy got a free eyeful, and that was it. The gym closed down shortly thereafter. The global, you know. So if that man is still in the area, which I high-key doubt, that locker room was no longer a hunting ground for him. I'm extremely lucky that nothing worse happened. I know this. You could drive yourself crazy thinking about all the what-ifs. What if I had been washing my hair? The sound of the water would have completely obfuscated anything, including the shower curtain being pulled back. And that's why I focus on this instead. I'm not going to say everything happens for a reason. There's a certain amount of randomness you just have to account for amongst all the canon events, right? But what are the odds? What are the odds that out of all the gyms in Nebraska, I chose that one? What are the odds that I kept the most insane goblin hours possible? What are the odds that the person at that gym on those hours was Trina? What are the odds of any of this happening? What are the odds of her and I striking up a friendship to the point where she happens to impart a cautionary tale? Something I'd never considered before, something that if I didn't think about, if I didn't have as a mental release, a consideration, a source of rage to draw from, things could have gone very differently. That's what I mean when I say Chekhov's gun. There was a reason that I was imparted this information. There was a reason that all of these stars aligned for me to know this, because maybe my own canon event was coming up. And maybe somewhere out there, the universe or something more specific, maybe they wanted me to be ready. Maybe they were looking out for me too. So what else can I do? The universe did me a good turn. Of course I'm going to share it with you guys. Who knows when Chekhov's gun is going to go off? And that's this week's story. Now, I haven't done the research on this. It's entirely speculative. But I'm fairly certain that a large component of why humans, since time immemorial, have always been storytellers is not just for entertainment. It's also to pass knowledge. You know, red clusterberry bad, don't eat, grog ate, grog dead. Not exactly a thrilling story with 3 acts. It has a certain impact, doesn't it? Some people listen to these stories simply because they like to hear a voice. Some people have fantastic voices. I could listen to them reading shopping lists. And some people are beckoned by that call of the wild, the thrill of walking right up to the edge of something that makes their heart race and their pulse pound and adrenaline begin to trickle into their systems, knowing that there's a safety harness to hold them back from the edge, to keep them safe. But I have to imagine that somewhere out there, for every one of these 400 or so stories, there is one very particular person that's meant to hear it. One very special stranger for each one. Not because they need it right now, but just to have it in the back pocket, so that when they encounter a very tall person in a crowd who follows them with black eyes, or when they get that creeping sensation of being followed and think back to how many times the people in these stories talked themselves down, tried to talk themselves out of trusting their own instincts, maybe they'll realize, oh, I should listen to my gut. My gut's trying to tell me something, and it's not for fun. Maybe it's for somebody who's going to head overseas soon, and they're going to see something on their FLIRs that isn't going to make a lot of sense. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. I mean, there's at least 300 random strangers and me. You're in good company. If you have a story that you'd like to share, something along these lines, or just something spooky that happened that you sense there's a reason behind it, feel free. Socials are in the description as always, and liking, commenting, and subscribing is always appreciated. But I'm just stoked that you tuned in today. And if you come back next Tuesday, we'll do it all over again. But until then, take care, strangers.